Dan Mullen, Scott Frost. You don't have to leave quite yet, but this is your warning. This is your warning. Welcome to the Voice of College Football here on a Monday night. As always, I appreciate everybody being here to join us for college football discussion on a momentous day in Lincoln, Nebraska, and in Gainesville, Florida. Not quite the hammer coming down on the head guy, but coming down close enough to send a message. Clearly not meeting the standard at those two fine football institutions, which of course met for the national championship in 1995 at the Fiesta Bowl. And Nebraska was way too much on that particular night, 62-24. So here we are where Nebraska won the national championship in 1995. Florida followed it up 1 year later with a national championship trophy. Nebraska won one more in 1997 with a split with Michigan. And Florida, of course, under Urban Meyer, two more in 2006 and 2008. And nobody has heard from Nebraska basically since 2001. Nobody has heard anything somewhat substantial out of Nebraska since 2008, 2009, 2010, also 2011, that first Big Ten championship game. So it's been from here in the mid to late 90s for Nebraska to here, still top 10 to 15 in the country, to here we make bowl games. We're contending somewhat at least into October for division championships, and we get to bowl games and we will sniff the top 25 to at Florida. Well, Dan Mullen took over, and I made the comment today to David Waters from Gators Breakdown. We had him on today, and I hope you check out that video because David always has exceptional insight into the Florida football program. And I made the comment to Dave. I said, well, maybe we should have expected this from Dan Mullen. He doesn't like to recruit. He doesn't recruit well. That's the lifeblood of college football. He basically took over Jim McElwain's players. He took over a Jim McElwain roster, and what happened? He improved it. He improved the product on the field immediately because the man can coach. He can spot talent. He can place that talent in the best position to succeed, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and he can dial up those plays. And so he took Jim McElwain's roster and he made it better. He made it work to the tune of taking a 4-win team to 10-3 and a New Year's Six Bowl victory, and then 11-2 in a New Year's Six Bowl victory. And now Dan Mullen, when most coaches are being evaluated more accurately 4 years into their tenure because they have their players playing for them, Dan Mullen is grossly underachieving, playing with other teams' players, or where he had succeeded with another coach's players. Now with his team, where he should be succeeding. Did anyone see that coming? For as bad as Florida football has been in sinking to 4-4 at the time, most of us looked at it as a situation, okay, well, we're not going to be able to really judge or evaluate Florida football for the rest of the season. They played like garbage against the better teams on the schedule. They lost to LSU. They got blown out by Georgia. They did play Alabama tough, but they lost to Kentucky. They lost to everybody decent on the schedule, and they're 4-4. Well, they get a nice, easy ride to the rest of the end of the season and into bowl play, and they'll be 8-4. No. South Carolina, the same South Carolina team that cannot find a quarterback. They are looking all over the place. They're looking to graduate assistants and walk-ons and they cannot find a quarterback. They don't have a quarterback at South Carolina. The South Carolina that is so incapable on offense that they needed a last-second field goal to beat Vandy. Vandy's basically not a member of the SEC. In name only, technically, yes, they receive the paychecks from the bowl distribution. They are listed in the number of teams. I don't even think the SEC network shows the highlights of Vanderbilt football. I'm kidding. They don't belong to the SEC, basically, but they were good enough to take South Carolina to the wire. And now you got to wonder about Missouri, too. But we're sticking to Florida right now, and Florida turns around and they go to South Carolina and get drubbed. Again, check out our segment with David Waters from Gators Breakdown. It's a great listen if you love Florida football or just want to keep up with the major brands and you want to keep up with the news surrounding Florida football, as they sent their longtime offensive line coach, John Hevesy, who has been with Dan Mullen for 21 years. So you know that the Florida brass sent a message to Dan Mullen, sat him down and said, look, do you want to keep your job? Then other jobs need to be lost, because John Hevesy has been with Dan Mullen as an offensive line coach, going all the way back to coaching together on the Urban Meyer staff at Bowling Green, if anybody remembers that. And so Dan Mullen did not want to make that move. He did not. It is not pleasant to fire people. And Dan Mullen has carried John Hevesy along with him all the way since the early 2000s, but had to axe him today. And then the more publicized and more expected ouster of Todd Grantham on the defensive side as defensive coordinator, gone at Florida. So Dan Mullen's job is saved. Hevesy's gone as offensive line coach. His defensive coordinator, Todd Grantham, finally ousted. Should have happened at the end of 2020. And now what? Dan Mullen doesn't automatically make it to 2022. He probably makes it to 2022. Maybe he jumps ship if he's got an opportunity, but obviously he's not showing himself to be a very good candidate for a head coaching position at the next level or in the collegiate game. And at the same time, if he can lose and his team can lose to South Carolina by 23 points, largest deficit, biggest loss for Florida ever against South Carolina. Yeah, they'll beat Stanford. Sorry, that would be Samford. Take out the T, replace the N with an M. Samford. They play Samford. Unless Samford can pull something close to what they did against Florida State and Willie Taggart a few years ago. Florida will win a game again this season. They will win a game. I don't know if we can necessarily count it, but that will be 5-5. Then who knows? Missouri could beat them. Florida State could beat them. So maybe Dan Mullen is coaching for his 2022, even though they've made these changes and he was forced to make these changes. That may not spare him as well. Probably need to finish 7-5. And back to Nebraska, we will hear more. We went live with Greg Peterson from Husker Online. Please check out our live show that we delivered at 4 Eastern, 3 Central today on the Nebraska channel. Check it out. We had a good time and really delved into it as much as we possibly could based on the situation right now. As it stands, and I'm not seeing any particular updates, it has just simply been announced by Trev Alberts, the AD at Nebraska. Scott Frost will be back for the 2022 season with a restructured contract. Maybe it's in the Jim Harbaugh style of restructuring, meaning, Scott, you squeaked by. We do see the progress on the field. We do see development. We do see you playing Ohio State tough, and Oklahoma and Michigan State, everybody in the world tough. But the W's matter. The W's have to matter, and they matter more in year 4 than they did in year 1. If Scott Frost was turning in these results and this performance on the field in year one, people would be ecstatic in Lincoln. They'd be saying, we went from that to now we're playing Ohio State tough and Oklahoma and Michigan State and everybody. Man, can't wait till we get this thing turned. Well, it's year 4. And as I stated on the Nebraska live stream, the wins have to eventually come. So what is it going to take for Scott Frost to keep his job next year? I would think in the 7-5 range. And if I was running the show, it would not just be a hard and fast 7-5. There would be conditions placed on that. I would need to see significant progress made against the better teams on the schedule. And they've made that. Again, it's the one-score narrative against everybody on the schedule. Put the Green Bay Packers on the schedule. Nebraska would probably only lose by 10. Put UConn on the schedule, and Nebraska would find a way to screw up the game and lose. The W's have to come, and Scott Frost's best wins are against Michigan State and Minnesota back in 2018. His first season. Minnesota and Michigan State, they were 7-6 teams. Those are his 2 best wins in 4 seasons, covering 42 games. Nebraska, with all the talk about how well they played on defense in particular and stayed close to top 10 teams in the nation. They've played 4 of them down to the final couple minutes. Their wins this year are against Fordham, Buffalo, and Northwestern. So the playing close would be more impressive and would mean more, the playing close against Ohio State, Oklahoma, Michigan State. And eventually that wears thin, and it is year 4, but it wouldn't wear so thin if, in addition to playing the heavyweights close, Nebraska could beat a Minnesota. They could beat an Illinois. They could beat a Purdue. Win those games. Win 2 of those 3 games, and Nebraska is no longer 3-7. They're 5-5. They're 5-5 if they would have won 2 out of 3 against Illinois, Purdue, and Minnesota. They're peers. Right now, they're peers in the Big Ten Western Division. Win 2 of those 3, you're 5-5. Okay, you got a fighting chance to get to a bowl game. You're playing an Iowa team in a few weeks that can't score in practice. My thoughts on Scott Frost and Dan Mullen. And again, there is more coming out concerning the Scott Frost situation. We know a restructured contract, and we basically know, although it's not been announced unless it has very recently, there will be coaching staff changes. A little bit later in the show, we will have Ryan Winter on the line from Sports Chat 503. He's going to join us to talk Oregon football. And Ryan is such a great guy, and he is such a kind man. He just is. He's just a great guy. He's fun. He's fun to talk to. He loves college football, and he loves the entire sport. He loves the Pac-12. He just enjoys the sport. So I'm going to take it easy on Oregon, their ranking, their atrocious schedule, and performances to a certain extent. But we're still going to touch that because that's what the narrative is on Oregon football right now. That's what it is. I cannot believe the many people that commented back to my top 25 that actually makes sense, that were defending Oregon and that I was placing Oregon too low at number... Where are they? 4? I've got them at 4. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee last week had them at 4. Did anyone watch them play Washington? Washington sucks. Washington's pretty bad. Oregon could not put them away. I mean, they couldn't. They made a stand. They made a defensive stop with 2 minutes left, and Jimmy Lake, what's he thinking? Doesn't go for it. Less than 2 minutes left on the clock. You're losing 24-16. You need a touchdown. You're losing, and I understand you can get the football back, but if you do the math with the timeouts, you're going to get the football back with about 30 seconds left. That's if you make a stop. You'll get the football back with about 30 seconds left, and you've got to complete a bunch of 10-yard passes at least. I'm kidding, 10-yard passes, 40-yard passes to score a touchdown in 30 seconds, the length of the field. But you're not going to trust your team to convert on 4th and 10 with 2 minutes left. You need to go for it right then. It doesn't make any sense to kick the ball away, assume that your defense is going to get a stop immediately, 3 and out. You're going to get your ball back to the offense with the entire field to drive with 30 seconds left. You'd rather try to do that than complete a 10-yard pass. That's bad coaching, Jimmy Lake. Doesn't make sense. So again, Ryan Winter is going to join us from SportsChat 503 to talk Oregon football. And meanwhile, we're talking to all of you. Let me get him the link, and then we're going to open up the phone lines for all of you. Before we get to our first caller, I want to remind everyone that Patreon is the place to be. 13-8 against the spread this weekend. That will do very well. 13-8 is about, somebody do the math for me, 63, 64%. 13-8. Something like that. It's plenty good. Real good. 120 right, 77 wrong against the spread. 120 and 77 against the spread, well over 60% for the season. Money line, 150 right, 49 wrong. 150 and 49. That's really not as good as I typically do, 75% plus. I usually am more in the 80% range. All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Welcome in. Who's on the line? Oh, it appears. Hang on just a second. Let me. We might have had a disconnected Bluetooth situation again tonight. I'm here. Yes, but you were not. You're not there. Yes, I am. You are there, but unfortunately, we do not. Yeah, we do not have you. Hang on just a second. This is disconnected. Okay. Can you hear me now? Yes, I can hear you. That's not the problem. So hang on. Oh, okay. Bluetooth is connected. It's not connected now. Had this issue the other night, and had to call my guy, and I should have remembered what he did to get this connected. It's not connected. Well, if you can hear me, maybe you can relate. No, I'm sorry. We're not doing that. I need to get this remedied. But thanks for calling. You can hang on if you'd like. If not, I totally understand.
You want me to do? I'm
there.
Here.
We are connected. What I wanted you to do was to hang on if you like, or not. So now we've got you. Welcome into the Voice of College Football.
Hey, Mark, it's Alan. And from Nebraska. We've talked a couple times.
Yeah.
They fired 4 coaches for the masses who wanted Scott Frost head coach.
Yeah, so I have not seen that yet. I did not have a chance to do anything else with that. So
there's only one offensive coach left.
Yep. Okay. So what do you think about that?
They massacred the offense. I think they had to come up with a bunch of heads to throw to the masses. The people wanted him fired. I think that's all it was. It was a bloodbath. What do you think?
Well, I think that it may turn out to be a decent move. We've seen Michigan do the same thing, and I think that if they truly believe that Scott Frost is a good head coach, then they did the right thing. But maybe they miscalculated, and he's not. They again, like I just said a few minutes ago, that they routinely play not necessarily up to ultimate expectations, but they've taken great strides on the field against top-notch competition, but they need to start just winning against the lesser competition. So, yeah, we'll see if this works out. Of course, I would think that there needs to be a set standard that he needs to live up to next season. And I would put him on a very short leash, and the wins need to, not just the performance. Of course, we've seen that. We need to see the wins follow. But,
right.
I don't know what his buyout is. A lot more goes into this than just, okay, we need to win football games, and do we need to get rid of him to do it? I do think that there is something to stability versus, okay, starting over, and who's going to be that guy? Who are they going to hire that's better? I think that is a consideration, especially in a year where there are already 4, 5 big openings, and there's typically 8 or 9 the day after on that Black Sunday after the regular season's over. So there are going to be more head coaching vacancies than there typically are by far, and so they may not have as much of a selection as they typically would.
Well, you get a great show. I thank you for having me on, and you go ahead and take the next caller. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it may not necessarily be a popular response. I don't feel convicted strongly one way or the other as to whether Scott Frost needed to leave. I know that there needed to be change. It's a 4th year, and there's no improvement. There's actually decline in wins and losses. But there has to be some type of explanation for better play on the field. Being competitive. They were not this competitive on the field under Mike Riley, and even under Bo Pelini. Bo Pelini was not as competitive against top-notch competition as Scott Frost is, but Bo Pelini beat everybody else. So the point I'm making is that there is something to Scott Frost and them developing and progressing as a program, but it doesn't count. It's not like they say. What do they call it? What's the saying about not being close enough, like in hand grenades and horseshoes? Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
I am good. What's going on?
Not much. I just kind of wanted to I'll leech off the Nebraska thing, and I'll say Scott Frost eventually will have to win you a game before he understand that there might not be they might not get their top guy, but they're in a tough spot. They remind me of USC.
I think he cut out for about 15 seconds. Nebraska is going to have to do what?
They're going to have to I think fire him or give him one more year.
Well, they're not going to fire him. They've already made their moves. They would have fired him. I believe, I don't see this playing out any differently. I think that this is a statement that he's here. He is here to stay for at least 2022. The staff firings are the changes that have been made to determine this is what we have to do for next season. So he's here to stay,
right,
for one season.
Right. I get it. I mean, it's tough if you're in Nebraska. He reminds me of Clay Helton, where he's just doing just enough to give you hope. But I don't think he'll ever go over the hump.
I'll believe. I am right on board with you as you finished that sentence. You were halfway through that sentence, and I was going to disagree with you. But yes, to give people hope, he's doing just enough. Clay Helton was doing just enough winning on the field. If you want to parallel Nebraska and USC to any degree, there's no comparison to what Clay Helton achieved and what Scott Frost is doing. Clay Helton won a Rose Bowl. He won a Pac-12 championship. He won something in the range of 75% of his games in the Pac-12. He did a lot better than Scott Frost, of course. But in terms of lifting USC to what the standard is, there was just enough hope. This situation with Scott Frost is strange. The way they play football is strange. Just the statistical improbability that they will continue to do what they've been doing this season and in seasons past is kind of dumbfounding to me.
Well, that's, in my opinion, you're playing to your level of competition every single week. That's the only explanation I can think of, because there's
to real MVP, we're losing him from time to time. But you're right. But why? Yes, that's what they are doing.
Coaching, motivation.
Coaching and motivation, maybe.
It's intangibles. It's not tangibles at this point. Leadership, I think, plays a big role in it. Maybe having Martinez, maybe you need to move off him.
I think the tangibles would be that they do commit. There was a time this season, and I've not really paid much attention recently, the last couple games that they've played, but at one point in the season, pretty deep into the season, I don't remember ever seeing an offensive line false start as much as Nebraska, just repeatedly, like killing drives with two false starts. So there's a coaching element there. There's a coaching element too. I pointed out a sequence that they played in the second half in the fourth quarter, down by 5 against Minnesota, that was dumb. It was just they had 3 consecutive drives where their strategy and their decision making on fourth down made no sense. 3 consecutive drives didn't make any sense. So they're making bad coaching decisions. They've selected a quarterback who's talented enough, I guess. He's athletic enough. He turns the ball over at the wrong times. He turns the ball over too much, but in addition to that, it's at the most inopportune times.
I have no dog in the fight. I'm a Kentucky fan. I'm no dog, but I feel so sorry for them losing this brutal this week. I mean, got to take the soul out of a fan. This is torture for a fan, for Nebraska. But I want to go on to a different subject, if that's okay with you, Mark.
Heck yeah.
Okay. Did you realize Florida's still ranked 20th in the FPI?
Oh, goodness. Well, South Carolina's got to be what, like number 7 then?
How does that make sense?
So, to real MVP, if we've got our guy Chris, if he calls me and brings up the FPI and defends the FPI in any way, shape, or form, I think I will just blow a gasket. It doesn't make any sense. And again, I tried to be fair about this, that if you build a statistical model, there are going to be outliers. There are going to be situations where you say, okay, this all makes sense. Okay, Pitt's number 11, that's a little high. That doesn't make much sense. But, out of 130 teams, there might be a handful that you have a serious question about, but not half the top 20. Where can I find the FPI? I got to look at the latest FPI now. Let's see here.
Just type in ESPN FPI rankings.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's 10.
Be the way to do it. I don't have any issue with Wisconsin being 10th. I think that's too high, but not by much. Wisconsin might have the best. Check that. Second best defense in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Georgia's in their own separate universe.
So we still have Pitt at 6. So we come humming along here. Georgia's 1, Alabama, Ohio State, okay, Oklahoma, Michigan. It all makes sense. And then Pitt's 6th. Pitt is nowhere near the 6th best team in the country. Then Iowa State's 7th. They just lost to West Virginia by a touchdown last weekend. Clemson's 8th. Yeah, Wisconsin's 9. Yeah, so they got 3 in a row that are way off. They're off by a good 10 to 15 spots. Utah. Yeah. Utah's 15.
Are they ahead of Oregon?
Utah is ahead of Oregon. Oregon's 22. That's one of the teams that I can get on board with. Oregon's playing like about the 22nd best team in the country. That's about. They're playing a bad schedule and they barely win.
Right. But they should still, even with all that, they still should be the first Pac-12 team.
Oh, yeah. They have played the best football in the Pac-12. All right. All right, the real MVP. We're going to let you go. You keep cutting out for like 15 seconds or so. I'm gonna move along.
Oh,
I appreciate the call, sir.
Sorry.
That's all right. Have a good one.
Yeah, sorry. I'll call in tomorrow.
No worries.
Bye.
All right. Next up, and again, we're awaiting Ryan Winter from Sports Chat 503. Maybe this ruined my appetite looking at the FPI. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Hello? You on the line?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we got you.
All right. How's life in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood tonight?
Oh, it's Michael. I am doing just fine. How are you?
Not too bad. Hey, got a couple quick questions for you.
Sure.
One is, do you think the 20-point spread is way too much for the game Saturday in Columbus?
Oh, I didn't see that. Yes, I do. 20 points?
Yes.
Man, Vegas loves Ohio State and they love Alabama. And I get it. Well, no, I don't get it. I don't get it. Could they win by 20 points? Of course they could win by 20 points, but shoot, if they were able to play 100 times, there's no way Ohio State averages a 20-point win against Purdue. I thought we were looking at 10 points.
Yeah, but another thing I'm trying to figure out, if you go over the last maybe 10 to 15 years when they played.
So maybe I should apologize to the real MVP. Maybe this is something with my phone, because now we got Michael just cut out, and we'll see if he comes back after like 10 or 15 seconds. There he is. Michael.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So
can you hear? All right.
Go right ahead.
I was just wondering, because usually in the last 10 to 15 times they played, with a couple of exceptions, hasn't the end of the game been within a touchdown either way?
The last 10 or 15 times? Oh, well, first of all, I don't really get caught up in comparing what teams did 20 years ago to that having any impact on what's going to happen this week. And as you well know, this Purdue team, when you say this Purdue team is better than Purdue is 7 or 8 out of 10 years?
No, I'm just going back with the rise. If you look at the scores within the last 10 to 15 years,
Yeah.
That's what I'm going. You see.
Yeah, we must. This must be our issue, and I apologize for that.
Trying to figure out, has it ever happened in a year to where an unranked team has beaten 3 top 5 teams in a single season?
You would think that would be nearly impossible for that to happen. So Purdue, they did not make it in the rankings again this week, did they?
No, they didn't, and I'm glad, because after what happened with Wisconsin.
Okay. They're in my top 25. I definitely have them ranked.
But no, do you see the last thing, and I might be cut out again, but do you see either Minnesota or Wisconsin losing before the end of the season? Well, I know they both play each other at the end of the year, but do you see one of them losing before the end of the season?
Wisconsin, no. Minnesota, yes.
To Minnesota, to Wisconsin, do you think?
Well, yeah, Minnesota. If Wisconsin, if I don't see Wisconsin losing another game, then I obviously see Minnesota losing to Wisconsin. So yes, that's what I see happening.
Mm-hmm.
I have thought from the time they stopped playing last season, I have thought Wisconsin was the best team in the division and would win the division championship. Now, they certainly did not get off to a great start, but here we sit at the beginning of November, and I am anticipating Wisconsin is going to continue to play better and better and better and win the division.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering, okay, I'm still breaking up and stuff like that.
All right, Michael. Well, I will let you go. I apologize. And thanks so much for calling. Call back sometime this week. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to take one more call. And if this person cuts out for 10 seconds at a time, then that pretty much confirms my issue. I will disconnect and reconnect. So hopefully this will work itself out. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
So, Mark.
Yeah, who's on the line? Uh-oh.
Yeah, so I think something's going on with the system.
Got to be the system. All right. Well, I am going to, yes, I am getting personal calls here. That's not going to help us. So I am going to, shut us down. And I apologize to everybody on the line, but please call back.
Thank you for calling Collins Studios. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage Studio web interface.
Okay, folks. Hopefully that corrected that. I will take the next call in queue. And if anybody got cut off, I sincerely apologize for that. And again, to Real MVP, Michael, and Reasonable Gump. I apologize for the phone system cutting out, doing that weird, cutting people out for 10 seconds at a time. All right, here we go. I think that lined everybody back up, so I don't know that we missed anyone. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Oh, this is Jeremiah.
Hey, Jeremiah. How are you?
I want to talk about Texas, yeah,
Texas.
and that
Okay.
that unfortunate game against Iowa State.
Yes.
I was wondering what you thought of that performance for the Sarkisian era of Texas. I mean, I want to give him a shot, give him a couple more years at least to prove what he can do. But I was wondering what your instant reaction was to that.
Well, yeah, we're not going to fire the guy after 9 games. So regardless of what they're doing right now, yes, we're going to give people a fair shot. Hopefully, we've not come to the place in college football where we are firing coaches after 9 games of their first season. So let's understand one thing. When a coach is coaching his first season, there's a reason why he's a new head coach, because the other coach was not getting the job done and meeting the standard. Therefore, the football program is typically not in a situation in which they are progressing, thriving, succeeding. So he's taking over a less than ideal situation. So there are corrections that need to be made. So if we are jumping on coaches after 9 games, then we've got a serious problem. So no, is Texas playing well? Are they succeeding? None of those things. Is Steve Sarkisian lighting the world on fire? Of course not. I did find it. I started out watching that game, and then it just bored me, and I moved on. That, for the mastermind offensive guru and play caller that he is, that they had some extremely dismal offensive production numbers in that game against Iowa State. You know, he's got to recruit and maybe go through the transfer portal to get offensive linemen, because for as much as everybody likes to think that wide receivers and running backs make that thing work, they don't. Quarterback, offensive line. They don't have an offensive line in Texas. They can't block anyone. So I don't care if you got Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy. You're not going to score points because you need to block people, and their offensive line is one of the worst in the conference. Well, I appreciate the call, and we will want to move on here and bring our guy Ryan Winter into the conversation here.
All right.
Hey, Ryan, how you doing?
Mark? Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, I was loving the show. I was watching before when I just got home here, and again, you're the best, man. Voice of college football. Nobody does it better than you, bud.
Well, I appreciate that. I tend to do a little bit better when the phone lines are working correctly. So hopefully we've got that squared away.
Right.
So I apologize to the callers that had to deal with the phone issues. But let's talk some Oregon football. So again, everyone, Ryan Winter, Sports Chat 503, joining us right here. That Washington performance, my goodness, Ryan. Now, you expected a tough game. That doesn't surprise you, what happened on Saturday night. I can't say that I watched the game in its entirety. I watched the intrigue in the fourth quarter. And, this was a 1-score win. I know they won by 10, but technically with the unusual decision that Jimmy Lake made, I don't understand that. Somebody's got to run this by me, Ryan. If you don't trust your team to complete a 10-yard pass on 4th down with 2 minutes left on the clock, well, when you get the ball back, granted, it can't be assumed that you're going to get the ball back because you got to stop the other team. You're going to get the ball back with like 30 seconds left, having to drive the length of the field. You're going to have to complete a lot of passes. So if you can't trust them to complete a 10-yard pass on 4th down, then how do you think you're going to drive the length of the field 2 minutes later? I don't get it in 30 seconds.
Yeah, strange situation. And the Husky fans were furious. I mean, they were the ones that were left. Most of them had already left by that point. But the ones that were still there enduring the rain, they were furious. They were booing this guy. They were cussing this guy. I mean, it was a terrible scene. And it actually kind of reminded me of, I try to go to road games every year, and not all of them, obviously, but I try to get at least pick one or two. The Washington game is very easy for me because I live in Portland. But 2019, I went down to USC and saw the Ducks run it up on the Clay Helton Trojan team. And the Trojan fans were acting the same way to Clay Helton as the Husky fans were acting to Jimmy Lake last night or on Saturday night. It was wild. And then now the reports are that he's been suspended for this next game because of his altercation on the sideline. The whole thing's falling apart. I mean, again, a very proud program, Washington. I grew up watching this team just completely obliterate the Ducks every year, go to national championship opportunities, or back in those days, play that Rose Bowl and have a great team, lead the conference and wins, and just absolutely to a point now where it's falling apart. And the fans are furious. I have friends, I have family members who are Husky alums, and they're furious. So it's not a good situation. The Ducks played the game that we thought they were going to play. I think this is a team that's not going to put a ton of points on the board. They're going to win games by possession or two and be very comfortable doing so. It did feel like they blew out the Huskies and they only won by 10. So in the stadium, it felt like the Ducks had control. After that first quarter, they just gave away points, had an interception, almost a pick six, and then gave away a safety. So it was 9-3 in the first quarter, and it looked terrible for the Ducks. And then the Ducks just start rattling off score here, score there, and they were actually able to throw the ball a little bit. This was a horrible weather game, too. I mean, it might not have looked that bad on camera comparatively to other weather games, but in the stadium, it was top 5 worst game I've ever been to. It was just completely nonstop rain for the most part in the second half.
Yeah, it looked like that, but you can never get the feel for it. You have to actually be soaked for hours and hours to really appreciate that kind of situation. So what was your vantage point? Where were your seats?
Well, I had the good seats to begin with right up front, and then my boy was like, hey, everybody's moving out of here. Let's go underneath the cover. So we actually moved back under the cover. But of course, we're out here in Oregon. We have rain gear. We're double dipped. My son actually pulled the sweet move, which was the poncho underneath the rain jacket just for another extra layer and warmth. But it's just a weird situation. This is always a rivalry game. You can throw the records out. Washington and Oregon actively do not like each other. I don't know if there's ever a spot where there's another team that actively dislikes each other as much as this fan base. I mean, like I said, I go to road games. I had numerous fans literally tell me to F off right to my face, right as they're walking by me, or just flip me off right in my face. And I'm like, I'm here with my son. What are we doing here? These guys obviously don't have a lot else going on in their life, at least positivity. It's mind blowing. And then they were just all over it in the first half. I mean, I saw a full-on fight in the next. Husky fans just poured a beer right over on Duck fans' head, and they got jumped by other Duck fans. They're in kind of the Duck section. I mean, the attitudes were crazy. I think COVID last year spawned on a lot of this because they didn't get to have this game last year. There was so much animosity last year because the Huskies thought that they deserved to go, and the Ducks ended up going because of COVID and everything else. And it felt like it was just fever pitch. And then the game started and the Huskies are just rolling. I mean, these Husky fans, the same ones that were cussing out the coach at the fourth quarter, were celebrating like little kids in the first quarter, thinking that they're going to get a blowout win against the Ducks. And then they literally couldn't score. I think they went 5 or 6 possessions in a row where they punted. They couldn't run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball. The Ducks defense was all over the place. These fans were crazy.
Now, not that I enjoy hearing about ridiculous fans like that, but maybe some folks in the SEC, maybe some folks in the Big Ten should hear something like that, because you know what the reputation is of Pac-12 fans, that they don't care. And that, they're going to show up late and they're going to leave early and they really don't care. And they're just going to, hey, is our team 11-1? Okay, now we'll get excited. No, there are some ardent fan. And again, I don't excuse that in any such way. I don't like to hear it. No. But there's a little fervor out there. It may be a little displaced or a lot displaced and kind of a bit disturbing to hear about. But and I was just, Ryan, I don't know if you heard this. I don't even know if you can hear when you're backstage before I was able to get you on here. So I apologize. And thank you so much for waiting. But, I was letting people know that you were coming on here in a few minutes. And I said, man, if I think of anybody who, from a media/fan standpoint, that's right about college football, it's Ryan Winter. Now, this guy's just a fun-loving guy. He loves his team. He's passionate. Sure, he wants them to win. He hates when they lose, but sure, when they do, he gives credit to the opponent, says, great game. Hey, and he points to different programs and things that are going on around the sport, and especially in the Pac-12, to say, hey, Jonathan Smith's doing a good job. I love to see what they're doing over here and over there. And that true spirit of, you can love your team and fully support and just hate when they lose, and you can still be balanced about it and be civil and act like a human.
Yeah, no, and I think social media. Thank you so much for those great kind words, Mark. I really appreciate it. I think it's just social media, and I think our culture in general. I think, like those guys who are all worked up in that game. That's fine, get worked up, but I don't think it needs to be personal. Like I said, I didn't choose the Oregon Ducks. Go back in time. My grandparents met at the Washington Husky game after World War II. So like my grandfather's coming off the war in the uniform. My grandmother's up there with sorority sisters. They met at this exact game, Washington at Oregon, in 1945. So my family dates way back. We're part of this community, but I also have a lot of love that I'm willing to give. I still think USC can be and has been the best program out here on the West Coast. And people are thinking, okay, well, let's just trash on the Trojans now. And I said, no, you understand. I mean, I grew up again. That's a place of respect. You respect that. So when I took my son down there, here I am going, and I said, this is the Olympics. 2 Olympics were held there. I mean, come on, you got to have respect for some of those places like the Coliseum, and other people just kind of, whatever, and then with this rivalry, it's real. I mean, this Washington-Oregon rivalry cuts very deep. There's multiple layers to it. And then this week didn't help anything with Jimmy Lake's comments beginning of the week of academically prowess. That was the key phrase all over the place. There was a lot of disrespect going back and forth, thinking, and I'm willing to be like, hey, I know University of Washington's a better school than Oregon academically. University of Washington is an amazing school. It's in a major metropolitan city. It's downtown. It's right on the lake. I mean, you don't get many campuses like this. I think there's only 3 campuses where the football field can be accessed by water in the country. Neyland Stadium's one of them in Tennessee, and I think it's Lake Washington. I think there's one other one. I can't really remember. Baylor, right? And those are very special places because of that. There's a cool thing to that. And then you add to it that it's in a major metropolitan city. I mean, Seattle is twice the size of Portland. Why wouldn't I respect Seattle? I mean, I think there's so much to be said there. Like, I said, I grew up with sportsmanship. I grew up playing on both sides of the ball. I played sports my whole life. I was the captain of every team I played on all the way through high school. I shook the other team's hand. I talked to the refs. Then I became a coach, and I've coached all through different youth sports, high school sports. I'm an educator. So I kind of promote this idea of it's okay to knock the other team down just as long as you pick them back up. Have a little respect for both sides of the ball. And I tend to think that's another thing that all these coaches, all these fans have to say is, that's a good team over there. That's a really good team over there. And it gives them more credibility. Trying to play this game like we're not recruiting rivals, or we're not, that stuff, all it does is just amp things up. Just give a little credit, say that team's good. And then if you beat them, doesn't it make you look better? I mean, why wouldn't you?
No, we like to tell everyone that they're trash and they're garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a dumpster fire, and they're hot garbage. Yeah.
Right. The other thing I've seen, I played basketball my whole life, coached basketball the whole time. I go to Blazer games here. I hear people saying to the other team, you suck. I heard these guys, say that Carmelo Anthony was with the Knicks. Carmelo, you suck. And I was like, this guy's a future Hall of Famer, one of the best scorers of all time. Check that. Then he comes to the Blazers last year. That same guy who's yelling, you suck's like, I love you, Carmelo. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And so I just think there should be a little more civility in it. And I do think that college football has a different angle than the NFL, because there is family connections to it. There is regional connections to it that run very deep. And that sort of thing, you have to be defensive about that a little bit. And Washington does stuff like they put little rubber duckies in the urinals, and they do that every year. I mean, there's just little stuff like that that's just kind of cute, whatever, rivalry stuff. But then there's like full blown Husky fans thinking they're going to go to this game and get in a fight with a Duck fan. Like, that's ridiculous. That is not, there's no room for that in our sport, especially with families around and everything else. And I'm a high school educator. These college kids were just in high school. I always tell these kids, these guys were at the prom 2 years ago. These guys were just two years ago at the prom. These guys are not 30-year-old grown men. They're young still. And so you got to give them respect as well. Yelling stuff, booing in the crowd because you want the other play. I mean, leave that for the pros.
Yeah, I think we've elevated So there's a give and take, there's a benefit, but there's also a downside to it in regards to elevating these athletes to this prominent position where they've always received the red carpet type treatment up through high school and now into the college ranks. And we've made it way too important. But then on the flip side, we've also given them way too much responsibility. They basically have a job.
Yeah.
Is what they have. They're not playing sports in addition to receiving an education. They have a job, and their job is to be a football player, to be a linebacker or a tackle or whatever. So it's
oh yeah. I mean, and I don't think people lose that as well. They lose this idea that one, these kids are students and they're trying to be students. They're young men. They're going out, they're doing things, they're hanging out with people or having friends, whatever else the case may be. And they've got a literally full-time job being a college athlete, that takes a lot of investment there. So, you got to give these kids respect. And I do like going on the road because it feels like only the hardcore fans are up there. You get to be with the flock. We go up there. You get to be a little closer to the team. They get to feel that energy. And that's really, I feel like what the best thing we can do as fans is give back and continue to give back and continue to give as much as we can. Put on our effort on our side of the thing to make it live and loud in the stadium. I mean, by the second half, the Duck fans were much louder than the Husky fans already. I mean, that fast. So it's a fun environment to go on the road. You got to give these fans respect. And you also got to feel a little bit bad for the other side a little bit. You walk out of there and they're like, these guys are just downtrodden. They think they don't know where their coach is going. They don't know what the future of their program is. Whereas Oregon, we're looking at this sitting pretty, man. We keep Cristobal going. Yeah, we're not blowing teams out like we did in Chip Kelly, but at least now we can hang with Ohio State when you play them physical in the trenches. It just happened this year. You go play Georgia next year to open the season. It's not like you're going to get blown out. You're going to be in it, at least I don't know if you're going to win, but again, that's the same conversation we had with the Ohio State thing. Didn't know if we could win. All of a sudden you go out to Ohio State in the horseshoe and you win a game that nobody expected it. So I do think Cristobal has changed the mentality out here. The perfect example, the strength and conditioning staff, they don't even have coats on. They're just in the polos on the side, just getting completely torrential downpour. Mustache, Aaron Feld, the guy with the mustache, just dripping off the mustache. I mean, these guys don't care. And they stay amped. They stay pumped up. And that's a different environment than what they had with Chip Kelly and Mark Helfrich, where everybody had the coats on.
We've got Oregon taking on Washington State, correct, this Saturday? We got Ryan Winter on the line, Sports Chat 503. The Ducks, of course, 8-1, number 4 in the most recent college football playoff rankings, with another edition coming out week 2 of the rankings on Tuesday night. So what's not working with this team? Because we could almost have a repeat conversation as the one we had last week, where the schedule's not great, another marginal opponent, but another close game to a certain extent, at least on the scoreboard, and Anthony Brown is a bit of a target out there.
Yeah, I mean, he's, basically game manager. Like we've said it all year, you're going to have some good, you're going to have some bad. I don't think anybody was going to throw the ball well in those conditions, not to make an excuse or whatever, but, he was 10 of 20, just under 100 yards, and did what he needed to do. But again, looked terrible in one interception to start the game, just absolutely brutal, but picked it up down the stretch. He is the guy. I think all the boo birds have been quieted. I know that people wanted the freshman to come in early, Ty Thompson, but I don't think that's going to happen. And if it was going to happen, they already had their opportunity and the window closed. And I do think that kind of galvanized the team a little bit. There's some veterans on this team who think this is the time. There were a lot of fans who were like, no, we need to build for the future. We've got this Georgia game next year, but this is the year where you have KT. This is the year where you have one of the best players in the country. And you have a bunch of other guys on this team that are seniors that want this thing now. And you got to strike while the iron's hot. I think Oregon's barely hanging on. I was surprised with the 4 spot for sure. I do think it was nice to see that the committee put Oregon in front of Ohio State just purely on that head-to-head win alone. I think you need to value that. But obviously, since that win, Oregon has not looked good. Ohio State has looked good. So one school's trending upward, one school's kind of hanging on or trending downward. And Oregon needs to pick up the pieces. And this game this weekend scares the heck out of me. It's Pac-12 after dark. Weird stuff happens out here. It's going to be the last game. Washington State always is close. A couple of years ago, it was the last-second field goal Oregon had to make to win it when Cam Lewis was a freshman. So I expect something very similar. This team has been galvanized after their coach, Nick Rolovich, is excused because of his non-compliance with the vaccine mandate. and they galvanized the team. Fan base is absolutely fired up, and they like what they've seen. They've been winning games that they're not expected to win. They've got a pretty electric quarterback, a pretty fun quarterback to watch, Jaden DeLora. And I think it's just one of those things where it's a matchup issue. And I think if Oregon plays their game, I don't think Washington State should be a problem at all. I think they're a 2-touchdown favorite right now. And I think they should be able to be close to that. And it would be great if they could cover it. I mean, a 2-touchdown win this year would feel like a blowout, Mark. I mean, holy moly. But it's the next week that scares the living daylights out of me. And that's at Utah. Utah's playing like the best team in the conference right now. They are just absolutely a machine, and they look a lot like the Ducks. They're a very physical team. They want to run the ball. They're good defensively up front. It's like looking in the mirror. And so I think that's a game that's going to be wild. And long-term for these Ducks, I know I see a lot of people out there that are thinking, oh yeah, the Ducks are in the playoff. No way. The percentage number for the people who, put all those numbers out, right? It's like 3% that they're going to make the playoff. I mean, it's terribly low.
3?
That's what I saw. I mean, it was literally, and it was like, that's because one, you got to win out the rest of the Pac-12 schedule, which is going to be tough for the Ducks. Also, I think you're going to have to beat Utah twice. You have to beat them twice in 3 weeks. That's going to be really difficult. Now, Oklahoma's going to have a similar situation by having to try to do that round robin schedule and then get that Big 12 champion. And maybe they face Oklahoma State twice or something, or Baylor twice, or whatever the case may be. But wow, it could be a situation where you're going to have to get Utah up there in Salt Lake City, tough place to play, and then go play your rivalry game, and then come right back and play Utah again in Vegas. If that's the way it works out, that's going to be a tough stretch.
It will be. I got to say that this situation is seriously challenging my stance that as long as two teams have the same record, that I go head-to-head in my rankings.
Right.
And I have continued to do that, and I will stand by that. But I got to tell you, if Ohio State runs the table,
right,
and Purdue has become a factor in this, and Purdue's now a decent team and a challenger, and they've got to run through after wins against Minnesota a long time ago, Penn State recently, and annihilating the likes of the it would be
sure
similar to Oregon besting Cal and some of those teams in the Pac-12 54-7, and the scores that Ohio State's put up on Indiana and Rutgers and Maryland, 66 points on Maryland, who's a 5-4 team, probably going to go to a bowl game. And now it's Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan in a Big Ten championship game, most likely against Wisconsin, up against that Oregon schedule. I don't know. I understand both arguments. I think they're both reasonable. Resume or the head-to-head. I can understand both. And I've always been a head-to-head guy as long as the record is the same.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I love what you do on your own top 25. I think you're right on it. And I agree that the head-to-head should matter. Again, like we said last time, why play the game? If the head-to-head doesn't matter, then why are you playing these non-conference games? But I do think that you're 100% spot on. The better season after that win has obviously been Ohio State. And if they finish off with these last 3 games with Purdue picking up the way that they are, the giant killers they are, I saw some stat that they're the number 1 team in the amount of top 5 wins or wins against the top 5 opponent. I mean, that says a lot. Now, that also says there's always a top 5 opponent in the Big Ten for them to pick off. But Big Ten is a great football conference. And so, yes, even though those teams that are losing and not really picking up those same records, pair that up with a Pac-12 team right now, and I bet the Big Ten team wins. So, again, that's going to be a tough one for the committee to figure out. I think the only way to make it really clean is if Cincinnati loses, if Alabama loses to Georgia. I think there's going to be real question marks down the stretch if Cincinnati wins out, and if maybe Alabama even loses a very close game, or if chaos happens, if Alabama beats Georgia, then I think you're getting 2 SEC schools in.
Well, regardless of what happens the rest of the season, if Mario Cristobal does not receive a Christmas card from every football program in the Pac-12, plus, of course, from the commissioner of the Pac-12 for at least keeping this conference in the conversation this deep in the season. Otherwise, if they don't beat Ohio State, talk about nobody talking about the Pac-12 whatsoever. It would be completely in the abyss right now.
Yeah, and we were talking about that last week. We were talking about, if Clemson had fallen off this hard this year, then, Pac-12 loves the fact the ACC looks like the worst conference right now, because if it wasn't for them, we'd be by far the worst conference. I mean, this conference lost 2 teams in non-conference to FCS teams. It's such a strange year, and we knew it was going to be a weird year after COVID. We didn't know what was going to necessarily go down. There's a lot of different moving parts out here, but right now, as it sits right now, I think Pac-12 is playing pretty good football at this point in the season. I think the 2 best teams are obviously showing up, and that's Utah and Oregon. I do think that both those teams are going at it in a very traditional manner. Not spread offense style, not a lot of the other sort of stuff that's catch on. I think they're going back to power and back to physicality, which will do well, hopefully, down the stretch. Again, that's one of the coolest things about football, right? It starts off very hot in the summer. You can do whatever on the field. Teams are going everywhere. It ends with absolute train wreck weather and climate and everything else. And unless you're in a dome, you're going to have to fight through some of that.
Ryan Winter, Sports Chat 503. He's right here on YouTube. You just stay right here on YouTube. Go to the search bar, Sports Chat 503. You find Ryan's work covering Oregon athletics. And, of course, it's football season, folks. Ryan, we appreciate it. Good luck to the Ducks. Enjoy the game this weekend. And most likely it's going to be a nail biter.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any nails left, Mark. It's going to be wild. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. You're the best.
Thanks, Ryan.
See you, bud.
All right. If I can get the trackpad to work, we'll get him off the air. There we go. Ryan Winter, Sports Chat 503. BGPO Football Funk. That's our guy, DeAndre. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution. I've seen all sorts of subjects and comments and questions in the chat that I would like to get to, but I need to honor these super chats. So I may miss a few questions here and there, but that's why we have the super chats available for those people to get recognized first and foremost. You can understand that. Let's see if I can find the other one. I saw one pop up somewhere in green. Can I find it? Bingo. Before we take the next call, Justin Burr. Hey, sorry, Mark. I missed the last few live chats. Love the channel. Please like the channel. Everyone, please like this particular video. Thank you so much for that, Justin. So much appreciated. So much appreciated. Join us on Patreon. I got my picks there, 13-8 against the spread, well over 60% for the season against the spread. And you get the predictions on the 12-pack of games from 20 media members. And I've got a really good idea, I believe, on how to carry us on into the off season on Patreon. Also, you're going to shop Amazon. You got Christmas to shop for. Go to Amazon. Use the link that we provide you. Just don't go to Amazon as you typically do. Please use the link that we provide. You're doing the same thing. You're going to Amazon, but if you use our link, doesn't cost you a penny. You do the same thing. Once you go through our link, you're on Amazon. Same shopping experience. You help us build the channel. Let's get to our next caller, and certainly apologize for you waiting, but I did mention off the top that Ryan was jumping on board to talk some Penn State football. I'm thinking tomorrow night we're talking Penn State football, Oregon football with Ryan. Welcome in. Who's on the line? Hello. Who's on the line? Okay. Somebody's left their phone. So we will keep it moving here. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
How's it going, Mark? This is Will.
Hey, Will. What's going on?
Mark, for the Nebraska coaching job, if it doesn't work out for Scott Frost this next year, do you think that Bo Pelini should be on the block to return to Lincoln?
No, I don't. Do you want him back?
No. Well, I just feel like he was the last coach to actually be able to challenge the big teams back then, like especially when they were still in the Big 12.
Well, this is all true. Absolutely.
Oklahoma.
I just don't know if that's what you want to do at this point. I think you want to get an up-and-coming young coach who's full of fire, full of vigor, full of ideas, full of vision of what he wants to do with the program, and just to bring somebody back. And I mentioned that when we went through the Scott Frost decision today by Nebraska, that Bo Pelini, yeah, he won 9 games. 9-4 was the bottom of the barrel with him. He beat who he was supposed to beat, and at least in the Big Ten, he lost decidedly to the teams he was supposed to lose to. His last 2 appearances in the Big 12 championship game were strong efforts against top level teams that played in national championship games. You got to credit him for that. To play Oklahoma and Texas as well as he did those 2 games to the final play of the game was impressive. But I just don't think, I think that there are other viable candidates out there. And I don't know how old Bo Pelini is at this point. I know that he's not old, but I just think that there are better options out there, and to bring back somebody that's already been there and you fired him. Look at Bobby Petrino coming back to Louisville. It didn't work out the second time. I just think that there are better options.
And do you think that Lane Kiffin would leave Ole Miss for a job like Florida or LSU? Do you think he could jump ship again, like he did that when he left Tennessee?
Sure.
Or do you think that?
I think it's very likely that he would leave to go to LSU. I think that Florida would have to convince him that they're dedicated and committed to spending the kind of money on football facilities and in recruiting that he would need to challenge Georgia. But I think LSU and their determination to win has never been questioned. And again, I will state this as I do on a regular basis when asked about coaching decisions. I don't know what coaches are thinking. I don't know what Lane Kiffin, what's going through his mind. So when you ask me that, I'm obviously conjecturing. I don't know the man. So I'm just guessing.
And do you think it's likely that if Cincinnati continues scraping by and Oregon does, do you think there's a chance that Ohio State could pass Oregon and that Notre Dame could pass Cincinnati, even though Cincinnati beat them by multiple scores in South Bend?
So you're asking if Oregon's going to pass Ohio State, and if what's going to happen to Cincinnati?
Ohio State can pass Oregon and Notre Dame can pass Cincinnati.
Okay, well, so the first one's talked about all the time. We just talked about it with Ryan here, and So the committee's going to do whatever they want to, and they can then figure out how they're going to justify it. So it can't be justified. Ohio State's schedule, when it's all said and done, is going to be so much more difficult than Oregon's. It's not even going to be comparable, their resumes. So they can justify, leapfrogging Ohio State past Oregon at some point, or they can keep Oregon one spot ahead of Ohio State for as long as the season lasts because they beat them head to head. Again, I don't know what the committee's going to do. There are 13 people that decide the fate of college football. I am not in conversations with them to know what they're going to do. Like, if there was a consistent pattern and precedent set for how they evaluate these teams and what they deem as being most important, second, third, fourth, and on down the line, then I would be able to answer your question. But they change it all the time. It changes by the week. It changes by the year. So I don't know. I would think it less likely that Cincinnati is going to be passed by Notre Dame because Notre Dame doesn't have the type of opponents on its schedule to do that. They don't have Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan, Wisconsin on its schedule to pass Cincinnati.
And do you think you have an idea of who's going to be, like, obviously this is another committee thing too, but who do you think is going to be nominated for the Heisman Trophy? Like, I know a lot of people are saying Bryce Young's the favorite, but he hasn't really done anything special against a great team. Like, do you think it could maybe be a defensive player could win it this year, or a running back like Bijan Robinson, or Michigan State running back? I'm forgetting his name. Or do you think it's just going to be a skill player as usual and not anyone special?
Well, I think the leading candidates for the Heisman Trophy right this second are Bryce Young and Kenneth Walker. I think they're the two right now. Brees Hall's having a nice season at Iowa State, but they've lost 3 games, and his last I don't know what he did this past weekend against Texas. So you got Brees Hall and Bijan Robinson, but they're not doing anything spectacular, and their teams are losing games. So that's not a good combination. If your team's going to go 7-5 and you're going to try to win the Heisman, you better like set records. So the way things are going right now, Bryce Young is by far in the best position to win the Heisman because his team's going to keep winning and he's going to keep putting numbers up. And we're almost assured that Alabama's going to play in the SEC championship game. So you got Bryce Young, you got Kenneth Walker, you've got people are talking about Caleb Williams, even though he's only played 4 games. He's got 14 touchdowns and 1 pick, and Oklahoma's a rejuvenated team with him at quarterback. So that's a possibility. In terms of defensive players, who are we talking about here? Kayvon Thibodeau hasn't played enough. He's the best NFL draft prospect on the defensive side, but he's not been the best player, not because he's not the best player, but he's not been the most productive player because he hasn't played enough. He's been hurt. Jordan Davis, I've heard it stated a few times that if we truly want to award this to the best player in the country, it's probably him, but he's not going to come anywhere close to going to New York. It's a quarterback award that at times goes to a wide receiver or running back. It's not the best player. It's the best skilled player, skilled position player. Well, I appreciate the call. You have a good night.
Can I ask one more thing?
Sure.
Okay. So do you think that the college team will bring back Urban Meyer, even with all the Ohio State baggage and all the personal issue baggage that he's gone through in the NFL and the video and all that? Do you think that he'll definitely come back? He'll definitely be hired by a school?
So the baggage that Urban Meyer has compared to, think of it this way. Hugh Freeze has a job at Liberty. Now, it's only Liberty, but at some point, if he continues to win there, he will be given a shot at a bigger job. Now, when you compare what Urban Meyer has accomplished to Hugh Freeze, it's obviously a complete joke. It's not even close. The accomplishments, we're talking about the guy with the greatest winning percentage of all time with 3 national championships to a guy that just had 2 good seasons at Ole Miss. There's no comparison, but there's also no comparison to what Hugh Freeze, Hugh Freeze ran the Ole Miss football program into NCAA violations. And then while those violations were being investigated, that's when the phone listings were found and all of that personal garbage. When you compare that to Urban Meyer having a rather stupid, senseless lapse of decency and good judgment, that's not even close. So it's not close on either level. So the bottom line answer to your question is, yes, there's all sorts of schools that would hire Urban Meyer in a split second.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for taking my call.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye-bye.
So let's see what we got here. So this would be my guy, Brent. Yes. Will I make a prediction on Purdue and Ohio State? Of course I'm going to make a prediction. I make a prediction on all the games. Are you going to know about my prediction? Well, if you follow me on Patreon, you get my predictions there. I got to honor my folks on Patreon. All right. And the next super chat, was there another one? Don't want to miss those coming in. Nope. Wow, tons of comments. Goodness. I'm like 500 comments behind. Oh, we got one that just came in here. Appreciate that. Jeremiah, thank you so much for that. Can I call again? Of course. I didn't get to ask my last question. Is that okay? Jeremiah. Oh, that's right. Jeremiah was on. Yes. Jeremiah, super chat contribution. Yes, you can call back in. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution, which probably leads me to my next strategy of cutting everyone off before they ask their last question. So then they will then give a super chat so they can get back on the line. We'll do that. All right. Next up here on the Voice of College Football. Hello? Who's on the line?
This is Jeremiah.
Hey, what's going on?
Just did my super. So yeah, so we were talking about Texas, and people were, when they look at the game and they look at the quarterbacks and you think they didn't perform very well, but I was looking back at last season and the impact the COVID stuff had on the football teams and their development, and that Card was a freshman quarterback during that year, and he didn't get the development that I think normal quarterbacks would have gotten that year, especially with a coach that got fired. And I think that hurt his development as he went along, and he's basically like a high school guy playing in his first game. Because think about it, he's only played like 8 quarters of football so far this season. And he only had 2 weeks of starting reps before he came into Arkansas. I was wondering what you were thinking about. What do you think about his development? And do you think it's been impacted by outside influences?
Outside influences. Well, it seems like his development is probably most hindered by the 5 guys standing in front of him every week because they're not very good. So that will hinder a quarterback's development as much as anything is when the offensive line's garbage. It's just a difficult situation for him and for Casey Thompson. He's being developed by a guy that's supposed to be a guy that is expert in developing quarterbacks and also then putting them in a position from play to play to succeed. So that should be a plus for him and his development, is that Steve Sarkisian was hired because he's a mastermind of both play calling and quarterback and offensive development. So that should be a great place to be. I hope nobody out there in the Texas fan base, and I'm sure I'm wrong, is blowing the whistle already on Hudson Card and his potential. We have way too much of this going on. We just had somebody call a few callers ago and ask me if Steve Sarkisian's going to get fired or should he get fired. He's 4-5. He's only coached 9 games. And 4 of the 5 losses, they were in it right till the end of the game. So.
Yeah. Definitely give Stark about 3 years, see what he can do.
Sure.
Don't know to fire him right now. But a lot of the Texas fans have just been shooting on Card that he is garbage and that they're just going to bring in some freshman quarterback and he's going to take his spot. I mean, I think we expect a lot out of freshman quarterbacks just because we've seen what the senior quarterback did the year before, and we expect that at the start. It's an unreasonable expectations.
And when you say we,
I want to quickly touch on,
if I could just add to that real quick, when you say we, you actually know that you mean just college football fans, not just Texas fans. College football fans are ridiculous when it comes to assessing freshman quarterbacks. They expect them to be immediately great. And we saw this with CJ Stroud. We've seen this with a number of other players. And was Trevor Lawrence immediately great? Yes. Who else was immediately great? Well, we got to go back like 7 or 8 years. Jameis Winston. Okay. Immediately great. It happens once in a while, but different players
but he was
develop at different at different rates. So,
Yeah. And then quickly touch on is like, I think our defense is I think gets way too much hate from Texas fans as well. Our defense hasn't played great in some certain circumstances, especially in the second half, in the fourth quarter. But I think with what our limitations are on defense, we have like zero pass rush, and we're missing our NFL safety and the NFL linebacker in Osai and Caden Stearns. And I think we've underestimated what that impact has on Texas defense. I think the scheme that PK has is actually working quite well with what he's got available to him until he can get some recruits in. Unless you think his system is flawed, or you agree in my insight there.
well, so the Texas defense, of course, what Oklahoma was able to do in one half with Caleb Williams was just, that was troubling. That was concerning. But once you have the momentum switch on you like that in a game, it just rolls downhill, and they got obliterated in the second half. Other than that, the Oklahoma State game, and of course, with Spencer Sanders at quarterback, they're not a great threat through the air, but they just wore down the Texas defense in the second half and beat them up. And that's when Jalen Warren ran for 150 yards in the second half. I'm trying to think of the other losses. This last weekend, again, the defense played well much into the third quarter. So I don't think the defense is playing that poorly, and I think again we're 9 games in, and you need to give not just the head coach but the entire coaching staff time. All right.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, thank you.
Appreciate the call. Antoine, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that so much. For my hard work, I'm not necessarily digging a ditch here, so it's hard work relatively speaking. But yes, we are working on sitting here for about 10 hours recording segments. So we've recorded today Michigan, Florida. Oh, why'd I start trying to remember them all? LSU and others, a number of other ones. And then the 2 live streams with Oklahoma and with Nebraska in the late breaking news. So Antoine, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Minnesota Dave.
Minnesota Dave. How you doing this week?
Yeah, not so good. As you
Sure.
can tell by the score. Yeah, Illinois just basically shoved our game right back in our face, and they couldn't do anything about it. I was very disappointed the way our offense just didn't move the ball all that much. And, I'm about to say, if Tracy Morgan need to ride the bench and put Annexstad back in, because it's getting pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad. I want to let you know as a scheduling note, and everybody listen up to this as well, that tomorrow night we've got our Iowa Hawkeyes live stream at 5:30 Eastern, and we're going to be joined by Daniel House from Gophers Guru. So Minnesota, Iowa coming up this weekend. We're going to be joined by Daniel House from Gophers Guru on our Iowa show. So you want to catch our Iowa live stream on Tuesday. What's wrong with Tanner Morgan?
Okay.
6 touchdowns, 7 picks. 2 years ago, 30-7.
The way I look at it is you have better wide receivers.
Yeah.
You had, 2 really great wide receivers. They're doing great in the pros right now, and Bates and Johnson are just playing lights out in the pros. And I would say Johnson, but definitely Bates has definitely became a very good acquisition for the Ravens. But I think the wide receivers are young, and I don't think he was as good as we thought he was going to be. You know, he has shown glimmers of it here and there, but it's just been stale, and we're relying way too much on the running game. And I think they should put in Ansteg, and eventually, if this keeps up, and they should try something, or try to get more passing plays for the number 12, the Tiffany and Curry. I can't remember his name. They usually have him in the Wildcat type stuff. I can't think of his name right now. But, it just seems to me like, the West, if anyone gets like just a decent quarterback, you have a great chance to win this division. I see Wisconsin, they don't really pass the ball. They have just great running backs and a great offensive line. Iowa, God, they're lucky to win a couple of games here and there. They barely beat Northwestern. And Minnesota either finds ways to, for some reason, the color orange just basically gets put here in the Gophers, I guess.
Well, you still have control of the division, correct? You're 4-2, and Wisconsin's lost 2 conference games as well. So it's still right there for you. You go through Iowa, you go through Wisconsin, and you can finish 7-2 in the conference and still win the whole thing, despite an inexplicable loss against Illinois. Not that I'm overly surprised, but
yeah, but we also don't know what type of Purdue team's going to show up. Is it going to be the Purdue team that beats Iowa and Michigan State, or is it going to be a Purdue team that just can't get a win against the team that's supposed to be?
What does Purdue have to do with Minnesota's chances in the West?
Minnesota beat them, but they're still, if they still run the table, if Minnesota doesn't, they'll still probably they'll end up winning the West.
Well, Wisconsin controls the West, but Minnesota does as well, and they face each other the last game of the season. So if Minnesota runs the table and Purdue does, then Minnesota's got the tiebreaker, and Wisconsin's got the tiebreaker on Purdue as well.
Okay, yeah, that is true.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter what Purdue does.
All right, I just say it's just because they're basically even right now. I think Purdue has Ohio State, which, let's face that, if they win that game, that would be amazing. It's getting down to crunch time, and I just, I'm really right now, I'm pretty down on the Gophers just because of the loss to Illinois.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the call.
All right. I'll definitely. When is that? When is the Iowa thing coming up?
Iowa Live show coming up at 5:30 Eastern tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Thanks for the call, man.
I will definitely
appreciate it.
Listen to that.
All right. We have come to the end of the line. A few things that you need to know. Sponsor the voice of college football. If you own a business, you can benefit from sponsoring right here and our over 500,000 views per month So if you've got a connection to a possible sponsor, let me know. Hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Also, let's see here. Let me finish this banner. And it's posted because tomorrow night, as we did last Tuesday night, we'll get together for the college football playoff rankings show, 7 o'clock Eastern, right here. Be here, and we'll talk it up. You know where to be when it comes to college football, period. But especially when it comes to college football rankings of any shape or form. This is the place to be to talk about rankings. So if you want the best in discussion, debate, and analysis, it's because of me, but it's also because of you, because you guys bring so much to the table. We will be here live at 7 o'clock Eastern time for the college football playoff rankings unveiling week 2. So again, watch party right here. Before that, we've got our Miami live show at 1:15 Eastern on the Miami channel. We've got Iowa live at 5:30 Eastern right here at the Voice of College Football on the main channel. So again, hit that bell for the notifications once you have subscribed. Hopefully everybody listening to me right this second is subscribed, because that's about 120 people or whatever it is, plus the millions that will be watching on replay. So please subscribe. And again, the lineup on Tuesday is 1:15 Eastern on the Miami channel, Hurricanes live, 5:30 Eastern right here on the main channel, Hawkeyes live. And again, our watch party for the college football playoff rankings unveiling, 7 o'clock Eastern time, then taking your calls here at the Voice of College Football. So appreciate everybody stopping by. You can contribute to the Voice of College Football and Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Also, you're going to be shopping on Amazon. I am going to get like a neon sign behind me. I'm going to start wearing Amazon shirts. Really, that would be quite disturbing. I don't want to do that, but just to let everybody know constantly, or maybe I'll just leave the banner up all the time. Shop Amazon and use our link in the description section of the videos. And as our guy DeAndre says all the time when he calls, he's like, man, everybody should be on Patreon, getting your picks every week. 120 and 77 against the spread this season, 150 and 49 against the money line. And yeah, use the link in the description section. Shop Amazon. We know that Christmas is coming, so everybody's going to be shopping, and you probably already are in the midst of it right now. Shopping on Amazon. Use the link that we provide. And we will see you tomorrow night, 1 o'clock, 5:30, 7. You guys have a great night. We'll see you next time. I am jumping back in just for this particular comment. Sue, God bless you richly. Thank you so much. Sue basically took my Amazon link right there. You can find it in the description section of any of the videos. Not this particular video because it's yet to post, but any of the uploaded videos. Grab the link that says in big caps Amazon and look. Sue, thank you so much for doing that. That made my day. See you tomorrow. 1:15, 5:30, 7.